This is the Chapter 3 Stigma Podcast. This podcast was created to be there for any individual who feels like they are at a low point in life and are confused, seemingly alone, and helpless in their situation. I am a recovering alcoholic, and I felt this way too, until I sat across the table from another addict who shared his story and made me realize that I was not alone in my struggles. My life was saved by this realization, and I hope to help anyone struggling by sharing my story to show you that you are not alone and that life can contain unbelievable riches and meaning. Welcome. I am glad you are here. Hey all, welcome to another episode of the Chapter 3 Stigma Podcast. So today we're going to stay in the namesake of this project and cover Chapter 3, more about alcoholism, almost all the way to the conclusion of the chapter. So we're getting there. Today's reading is fairly long, so I'm gonna just jump right into it. So to the book, let us take another illustration. Fred is partner in a well-known accounting firm. His income is good. He has a fine home, is happily married, and the father of promising children of college age. He has so attractive a personality that he makes friends with everyone. If ever there was a successful businessman, it was Fred. To all appearance, he is a stable, well-balanced individual, yet he is alcoholic. We first saw Fred about a year ago in a hospital where he had gone to recover from a bad case of jitters. It was his first experience of this kind, and he was much ashamed of it. Far from admitting he was an alcoholic, he told himself he came to the hospital to rest his nerves. The doctor intimated strongly that he might be worse than he realized. For a few days, he was depressed about his condition. He made up his mind to quit drinking altogether. It never occurred to him that perhaps he could not do so in spite of his character and standing. Fred would not believe himself an alcoholic, much less accept a spiritual remedy for his problem. We told him what we knew about alcoholism. He was interested and conceded that he had some of the symptoms, but he was a long way from admitting that he could do nothing about it himself. He was positive that his humiliating experience plus the knowledge he had acquired would keep him sober the rest of his life. Self-knowledge would fix it. And so I'm going to pause here. I've talked quite a bit already about the pursuit of self-knowledge and just how actually in the grand scheme of things, by the time I had gone into the depths of my battle with alcoholism, self-knowledge was incredibly hurtful for me because I continued to want to solve the problem for myself. And I was at a point with my drinking relationship with alcohol and just the disease of alcoholism that I could not do it. I do want to call out a portion of this first write-up, obviously summarizing kind of Fred's personality and his standing. And the book calls out, in spite of his character and standing. One thing that I just want to make really apparent is what I experienced and really opened my eyes to starting in rehab and then continuing in AA and just injecting myself into the community of recovery is there is no filter when it comes to addiction and alcoholism. It doesn't discriminate. It impacts the incredibly wealthy. It impacts the incredibly poor. It impacts the perceived successful individuals as well as those that seem like they can't keep their lives together. And it's just there's really no discrimination when it comes to those that are afflicted and impacted by alcoholism. So with that, back to the book. We heard no more of Fred for a while. One day we were told that he was back in the hospital. This time he was quite shaky. He soon indicated he was anxious to see us. The story he told is most instructive. For here was a chap absolutely convinced he had to stop drinking, who had no excuse for drinking, who exhibited splendid judgment and determination in all his other concerns, yet was flat on his back, nevertheless. And I'm just going to pause there. This part about exhibiting splendid judgment and determination in all other concerns, that is one thing that just had me flat out and extremely confused as I was going through my battle with alcoholism and my personal relationship and struggle on that front, because it truly was, in every other regard and aspect of my life, I was keeping things together and I was doing things well, except when it came to my relationship with alcohol. It was the one thing that I could not control. It was the one thing that I could not seemingly fix by myself. So back to the book. Let him tell you about it. So this is Fred recounting his story. I was much impressed with what you fellows said about alcoholism, and I frankly did not believe it would be possible for me to drink again. I rather appreciated your ideas about the subtle insanity which precedes the first drink, but I was confident it could not happen to me after what I had learned. I reasoned I was not so far advanced as most of you fellows, that I had been unusually successful in licking my other personal problems, and that I would therefore be successful where you men failed. I felt I had every right to be self-confident, that it would be only a matter of exercising my willpower and keeping on guard. In this frame of mind, I went about my business, and for a time all was well. I had no trouble refusing drinks, and began to wonder if I had not been making too hard work of a simple matter. One day, I went to Washington to present some accounting evidence to a government bureau. I'd been out of town before during this particular dry spell, so there was nothing new about that. Physically, I felt fine. Neither did I have any pressing problems or worries. My business came off well. I was pleased and knew my partners would be too. It was the end of a perfect day, not a cloud on the horizon. I went to my hotel room and leisurely dressed for dinner. As I crossed the threshold of the dining room, the thought came to mind that it would be nice to have a couple of cocktails with dinner. That was all. Nothing more. I ordered a cocktail in my meal. Then I ordered another cocktail. After dinner, I decided to take a walk. When I returned to the hotel, it struck me a highball would be fine before going to bed. So I stepped into the bar and had one. I remember having several more that night and plenty next morning. I have a shadowy recollection of being in an airplane bound for New York and of finding a friendly taxicab driver at the landing field instead of my wife. The driver escorted me about for several days. I know little of where I went or what I did or what I said and did. Then came the hospital with unbearable mental and physical suffering. As soon as I regained my ability to think, I went carefully over that evening in Washington. Not only had I been off guard, I had made no fight whatever against the first drink. This time, I had not thought of the consequences at all. I had commenced to drink as carelessly as though the cocktails were ginger ale. I now remember what my alcoholic friends had told me, how they prophesied that if I had an alcoholic mind, the time and place would come, I would drink again. They had said that though I did not raise defense, it would one day give way before some trivial reason for having a drink. Well, just that did happen and more, for what I had learned of alcoholism did not occur to me at all. I knew from that moment that I had an alcoholic mind. I saw that willpower and self-knowledge would not help in those strange mental blank spots. I had never been able to understand people who said that a problem had them hopelessly defeated. I knew then it was a crushing blow. So I'm going to go back a little bit. Also, I stumble over these 1930s phrases and sentence structures sometimes. So apologies for that if I stumbled up a little bit. But so it goes. Anyway, what I wanted to back up to was the part of this where Fred talks about being caught off guard. I made no fight whatever against the first drink. These are the moments that are the most risky for those of us who are alcoholics. Again, the thought pattern that occurred in my story was, well, this time will be different. I would be going throughout my stint or period of sobriety, whether it was 3 weeks or 3 months sometimes, and there would be a thought that randomly popped into my head at a totally unexpected time that I could have a drink. This time will be different. And again, the next part of this sentence, this time I had not thought of the consequences at all. I covered in the last podcast, but my connection with the idea of another trait of mine that I have, it being colorblind, and basically saying like the best way to describe it is like I forget. I cannot remember in terms of alcoholism the consequences that occurred. It felt like that every single time that I went back to drink is like I erased the memories and the pain and the difficulty associated with the known outcome any time and every time that I took a first drink. One other piece of this story that's a little bit hidden in it, but given my experience and what I've lived through during my periods of battle with alcoholism, that really stands out to me in Fred's story here is he had, so going back, he talks about it was the end of a perfect day, not a cloud on the horizon. There is a part of my story where relapses occurred continually because of a period where I had some sort of relief of responsibility. And when I had this let up of responsibility, whether it's like having to watch my son or be ready for simple things, even like being responsible for having dinner ready the next few nights or something like that. And it would happen to me on work travels because I was away from the home. I just had a hotel room to go back to. I didn't have the normal things to do and take care of around the house. These periods where I had relief of responsibility many times led me to drink. And again, in a very unexpected and unanticipated manner. My guard was down a lot of those times. And then I was continually caught off guard and by surprise when I would go to drink or when I would find myself drinking. So back to the book. 2 of the members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to see me. They grinned, which I didn't like so much, and then asked me if I thought myself alcoholic and if I were really licked this time. I had to concede both propositions. They piled on me heaps of evidence to the effect that an alcoholic mentality, such as I exhibited in Washington, was a hopeless condition. They cited cases out of their own experience by the dozen. This process snuffed out the last flicker of conviction that I could do the job myself. And I want to pause on that point exactly. That is the moment where the alcoholic, the person that can finally enter recovery, realizes that their issue and their state of mind has become unmanageable. And one of the things that I really want to highlight that I don't think I've really gotten into as we've gone through chapter 3 in the big book so far is that the decision point about what constitutes being unmanageable is the sole responsibility and decision of the alcoholic. It could be the first time that a loved one expresses concern over their level of drinking. That could be the decision point. That could be the indication to someone that their life has become unmanageable. And once they reach that decision, they are free to enter into the world of and on the path of recovery. Or it could be as extreme as, honestly, in my circumstance, where I had intense consequences occur throughout the year, risks of losing key relationships in my life with family and with friends, as well as real and dangerous consequences that continued to occur with physical accidents that would happen, injuries to myself, near-death experiences. All of those I had to walk through before I was able to say, I feel like this has become unmanageable. It's insane to say at this point, but it is the truth. So then back to the book. Then they outlined the spiritual answer and program of action, which 100 of them had followed successfully. Though I had been only a nominal churchman, their proposals were not intellectually hard to swallow. But the program of action, though entirely sensible, was pretty drastic. It meant I would have to throw several lifelong conceptions out of the window. That was not easy. But the moment I made up my mind to go through with this process, I had the curious feeling that my alcoholic condition was relieved, as in fact it proved to be. So I'm going to pause there. I really want to highlight these points around being a program of action. And I know that I have talked extensively about the pursuit of self-knowledge not being enough to relieve myself and relieve others that I have met on this road of recovery of their addiction, of their alcoholism. Yet the requirements and the ability to find yourself in a life of recovery is intensely action-oriented. I wake up every single day and think about what action am I going to take today to maintain my life on this road of recovery. It's incredibly empowering and motivating in my case. I have not hit any sort of fatigue with it at all, because all that I'm seeing is that my life continually gets better despite some bumps in the road and despite some real hardships that I faced. Taking this action and being serious about the pursuit of my recovery journey has been unspeakably and indescribably rewarding in my case. And there's a statement that's a little bit buried in here, but I want to extract it out because it is a very common statement in the walls of AA, but it can be applied in so many other aspects. And it's especially key and important in your own recovery journey. And honestly, just in any journey that you look at pursuing. And that is this. The solution is simple, but it is not easy. Again, it is simple, but it is not easy. There are 12 steps. There are 12 steps that have worked for millions of people. The evidence is overwhelming at this point. That doesn't mean it's a perfect solution for everyone, but I have not met a single person in my time in recovery at this point. And that genuinely is cusping hundreds of individuals at this point that I have heard their story, heard their background, understood their pain, understood their suffering. I have not met a single person with significant amount of time under their belt in recovery. In addition to that, being genuinely free, because I can tell today, if I talk to someone, I can tell someone who is still pained by their alcoholic mentality and their alcoholic tendencies. I can see that it's still there. I can see that the work hasn't been put in. I have not met a single person who is relieved of their alcoholic problem who has done so passively. Every single person has taken incredibly deliberate and purposeful action. And action is the only way to relieve yourself. And honestly, that is, to me, as intimidating and as fearful, because the having to take the steps and having to do the work associated with the steps is scary for people. Fear blocks countless alcoholics from finding the solution and for figuring it out for their own lives. And I just want to end today and just say the action, the investment that you're making in sitting down and doing the steps. You can go to AA meetings. That's a phenomenal first step. But take action. It's only through action that this problem of alcoholism gets relieved. And you get to live a life that you literally could not imagine sitting where you are today. It's incredibly motivating because there are aspects of taking that action that you control. And that's what alcoholics, that's what we seek out, is where can I control things? Where can I have input in them? There is so much in life that you are going to realize that you do not have control over. Nobody but yourself is holding you back from going through the steps, from taking the action that is required to find the solution for your addiction, for your alcoholism. So with that, I'm going to wrap today, and we will be back next week. Thank you all. Much love. If you enjoyed this podcast, share it with others or give us a rating on your channel of choice. My hope is that my story can help others in their struggles with addiction or any other aspects of life that they feel could be bettered. You can follow us on social media at Chapter 3 Stigma on Instagram and YouTube. I cannot solve your problems for you, but I can listen. If you want to reach out with a message through one of those channels, I will respond and let you know that you are not alone. All the best, you are loved, and life is worth every struggle and bit of suffering you have to endure. Until next time, all the best.